before I leave, before we wrap things up, I want to talk a little bit about Crawford Spence and Lopez Lomachenko, because they were both interviewed, well, Spence and Lopez were, right? Talk about Lopez first. I saw a lot of pictures and on YouTube I saw a lot of headlines saying Lomachenko is now saying that Bob Arum bribed the judges and that he was robbed of a fair chance, whatnot. And this is what, in my opinion, is wrong with boxing channels, with most boxing channels on YouTube, is this whole bait and switch and clickbait and, you know, creating headlines and biased reports. That it's just, I went yesterday, I saw the interview while I was actually looking for Canelo-Smith stuff, and first of all, he didn't say that. He just said someone bribed the judges. I don't know who bribed the judges, but his reasoning for it was he watched the fight 5 times and he scored it a draw, right? Which is the same thing Andre Ward scored it. I scored it 115, 114 for Lopez because I scored the second round a draw, which Lomachenko scored for himself. Andre Ward scored for Lomachenko, and Andre Ward scored, I think, the 6th round a draw. And we go back to that whole, you know, the whole mentality thing, right? If you look at what Jaron Ennis said, right, he wants to be a 5-6 weight world champion. If you look at what Terence Crawford has done, right, coming 135, 140, 147, just constantly looking for bigger and bigger challenges. That's what makes these guys great. That's what made Floyd Mayweather great. There was no, oh, I'm the king. No. Floyd Mayweather was the king after he beat De La Hoya. When he was the cash cow, that's when he was the king. The only guy in boxing right now, or the only 2 guys in boxing that can say that right now are Canelo Alvarez and Anthony Joshua. No one else has a fixed place at the top of their respective divisions. I think, you know, Lopez has the belts, but it wasn't, he didn't beat Lomachenko up. He didn't just obliterate Lomachenko, take the titles, and now it's it. He had 6 good rounds, and then Lomachenko had 6 good rounds. I personally feel Lomachenko did more damage to Lopez than Lopez did to Lomachenko. I mean, if you look at both guys' faces after the fight, you see Lomachenko looked much cleaner than Lopez did, right? And not to take credit away from Lopez, because Lopez is a monster for taking that fight at 23. But he needs to fight with that chip on his shoulder, that constant need to prove something, that constant need to go to be, you know, look for more challenges. He's not standing there and say, you have to prove that you can get in the ring with me. No, you have to want to beat everyone. You have to want to beat Devin Haney. You have to want to beat Lomachenko decisively, right? Those things, if you don't have that, then you don't have it. Then you're not cut from the same cloth as Andre Ward, Floyd Mayweather, Sugar Ray Leonard, Macho Camacho, as all these greats are, right? If you don't have that desire, if you don't want to show it, if you just about talking and saying it, right? Which is the same thing with Errol Spence. He's saying, you know, Crawford needs to take 70-30, his 30% or 40% split in the fight, and just, if he wants to fight, right? And I ask, what makes you think that? What gives Errol Spence leverage? The only thing that gives Errol Spence leverage in their negotiation is that half of the people in boxing think that he beats Terence Crawford, and the fact that he is the bigger welterweight, right? But if you really look at their careers, and everyone says Terence Crawford hasn't fought anyone, right? And Spence hasn't really fought anyone. Spence has fought Sean Porter, Kell Brook. Danny Garcia is a good win, but Danny Garcia was already 0-2 against the top welterweights, right? Danny Garcia is not Terence Crawford. So Terence Crawford is a 3-weight world champion who has had 15 world championship fights against 8 current or past world champions. He was also undisputed light welterweight champion of the world, right? On the other side, you have Errol Spence, who has fought 6 world title fights against 6 current or past world champions, right? So the fact that the world champions that Crawford fought aren't as famous as the world champions that Spence fought, that doesn't mean that they are better. Danny Garcia Danny Garcia is not a better fighter than Indongo was when Crawford beat him. Indongo was done after Crawford, but when Crawford beat him, Indongo had gone and beaten he had gotten 2 world titles in his opponent's backyards, right? Victor Postol had knocked out and completely dominated Lucas Matisse, who Danny Garcia had problems with before, right? So these are all guys that Terence Crawford beat easily. Terence Crawford has yet to really be tested in his career. So it's not that Spence has fought better opposition, he's fought more famous opposition. But that's because no one cared about 135 at that time where Crawford was there. You know, everyone always cares about 140, 147, right? But if you actually make a comparison of their careers, and you had to ask me between Spence and Crawford right now, who would go into the Hall of Fame if they both retired right now, my money would be on Crawford. So what gives Spence that? And I'm not saying that Spence is scared of Crawford. I'm not. I'm not saying I also don't believe Lopez is scared of a rematch with Lomachenko. I don't think the fighters are scared. That's what I think is that it's more important to be considered. It's more important to them to be considered the top dog than it is to actually fight these guys. They don't want to fight if they aren't recognized as the A side. And to me, that is just, deprives the fans of what they want, right? We want to see these great fights happen, but they can't because these guys they care more about having the name on the banner first and coming out second than they actually care about proving that they deserve these things, right?